Good morning, everyone. National Gallery Scotland describes the gallery that we are in today as a love letter to Scotland, with the art on display telling stories of our land and our people. Wherever we stand on the question of independence, I know that everyone in this debate loves this beautiful country. Where we differ is over what we believe is the best future for Scotland. One future is to stick with Westminster. The other is to take our future into our own hands. Last month, the Scottish Government set out the long-held principle that the United Kingdom is a voluntary union of nations and that people in Scotland have the right to decide their own future. I've set out the route that we need to take for Scotland to become an independent country, to give life and effect to that principle. And today, the Scottish Government is setting out the why of independence. Why? We believe a better Scotland can be built by becoming an equal, independent nation-state. We are therefore publishing this document, A Fresh Start with Independence. Alongside the main document, the Government is publishing a technical paper looking at the macroeconomic framework of an independent Scotland. Given the direction Westminster is intent on taking Scotland, day by day, the need for people in Scotland to consider an alternative future is becoming more and more pressing. Indeed, I believe it is urgent and essential. The prospect of Nigel Farage becoming Prime Minister is a very real one. But even if Farage does not make it to number 10, he is driving the agenda at Westminster ever more to the right. I believe with all my head and all my heart that cannot be the best future for Scotland. That rightward shift at Westminster is one of the obvious factors that have changed since the people of Scotland last considered this question in 2014. Others include the disaster of Brexit, the huge rise in energy bills, the pursuit of a migration policy which is damaging to our National Health Service and to our economy. But perhaps above all else, it is that living standards for far too many people in the UK and in Scotland have ground to a halt. In that crucial respect of providing rising living standards, the UK and Westminster have failed. Given that failure, I have a duty, a responsibility, to set out an alternative. I believe a better future is possible. Today's paper sets out why independence is that better future. Fundamentally, it shows decisions about Scotland being taken in Scotland. The very essence of self-government works for the people who live here. Prescriptions are free. There's been a huge expansion in early learning and childcare. Child poverty in Scotland is falling because of measures such as the Scottish Child Payment. And we're helping with the cost of living through policies such as free bus travel for people under the age of 22 and the abolition of peak rail fares. The Labour Liberal Democrat coalition before us, in exercising self-government, brought in free personal care for the elderly, they introduced the smoking ban, and one of my predecessors, Jack McConnell, recognised the specific population challenge we have in Scotland and tried to do something about it. On that latter point, the new UK Labour government unfortunately refuses to accept, let alone take action, on the need for an immigration policy tailored to the needs of Scotland. So, times have changed. But the critical, bigger point is this: self-government works for the people of Scotland. And that will be a major theme as we press the case for Scottish independence. And just as self-government in the context of the Scottish Parliament works, the benefits of full self-government for independent European countries of Scotland's size are also clear. I know that far too many people in Scotland are struggling to get by. Life should be and can be better and more secure. Comparable countries to Scotland, like Denmark and Ireland, are wealthier than the UK. They are fairer than the UK. They have higher levels of investment and they are more productive. Those countries pursue a variety of policies depending on their circumstances and political cultures. But the common thread is this: they enjoy the golden combination of independence and EU membership. That's enabled those countries to flourish. So today's paper sets out the trade diversification strategy of Ireland, enabled by being part of the EU single market, and which has led to an economic transformation. The paper sets out the social partnership model of Denmark, and the way that Denmark and other Scandinavian countries have managed to build so-called Nordic giants. Those are homegrown and headquartered Nordic multinational firms. There are valuable lessons here for Scotland. Looking to the future, there is much to be optimistic about if we too could take advantage of that golden combination of independence and EU membership. We have extraordinary energy resources, world-class universities, a talented and educated population. We're renowned for success in industries as diverse as food and drink and computer gaming. With the correct policy framework, as we embark on building a nation-state in Scotland, there is every reason to believe that we can match the high productivity, high living standard societies of our neighbours in northern Western Europe. The opportunity of Scottish independence is the opportunity of higher living standards. Today's paper sets out, therefore, not just the why of independence, but how a better future as a nation-state can practically be achieved. So as the urgency and necessity of independence is now clearer, it is these themes that we will take to the people of Scotland: the benefits of self-government, the huge potential that is all around us, the evidence that independence for countries like Scotland leads to higher living standards and greater equality, and therefore the transformational impact that placing our future into our own hands can have on this and future generations in Scotland. I look forward to the debate that will come, and also to addressing your questions this morning. Thank you, and we'll take some broadcast questions first before I speak to the news media thereafter. So I'll come first of all to Colin Mackay of STV. Colin.
Thank you, First Minister. In 2014, your campaign struggled with questions on currency, pensions and mortgages. How does this answer those same questions today, and also doesn't your strategy kind of prejudge your debate at conference on Saturday on independence?
Well, I think the point about the route to independence is that I think if anybody's interested in securing Scottish independence, there has to be an agreed basis upon which that objective and that aim can be realised. And that's what the proposition that I've put to my party conference enables us to do, to have an agreed route to actually succeed in delivering on Scottish independence. And I'm obviously intent on ensuring that that is what is the outcome of that process. In relation to some of the other issues that you raise about the questions that were aired in the 2014 referendum, I acknowledge that at the heart of the argument I'm setting out today is a need for us to focus intently on raising the living standards of people in Scotland, because one of the principal arguments that has developed since 2014 is that essentially the promise of higher living standards, the promise of financial security, the promise of financial advantage in the aftermath of voting no in the 2014 referendum has not materialised. And living standards in Scotland and across the United Kingdom have failed because of the decisions taken by the United Kingdom. So essentially, what I want to focus the debate on is that whole question of living standards, about how we equip ourselves in Scotland, having demonstrated that self-government works for the people of Scotland, and whether it's, as I've said in my comments today, whether it's a Labour or Liberal government that's taken these policies forward, or an SNP government that's taken these policies forward, crucially the exercise of self-government has worked for the people of Scotland. And in a context where living standards are stalled in the United Kingdom, and that people are living on net income, which is that's been stagnant for years, a new constitutional structure with the opportunities that our international neighbours enjoy, that combination of independence and EU membership, is a pathway to enabling individuals to have higher living standards. So that's the debate that we've got to have as a country, which is about how do we ensure that we are able to deliver higher living standards for people in Scotland and transform their lives in the way that we work in our devolved powers in the existing arrangements to transform lives at the present time. Fulsom.
Morning. And I apologise if this is going to be a stupid question because I haven't had much time to read through the detail of the 100 pages of material that we handed this morning. Basically, I'm wondering, what is this? I mean, is this a piece of economic commentary about the current state of the UK and of other nations that we compare to? Is this the Growth Commission 2.0? Have we got new policies in here about what you would do with the powers of independence? Do we have, costings and forecasts about how long it would take to set up a new currency, how much it would cost to set up a state? Because given this has been produced with the power of the Scottish Government behind it, you should be able to do that kind of forecasting. I'm essentially asking, is this something like the Growth Commission? Because it feels a little bit more like it's been rushed out on a Wednesday morning before your conference as a piece of party management, before you have a big debate with your members about independence.
Well, what we said in the programme for government in May was that we would produce a document explaining the rationale and the arguments for independence, and that's what it is. So there's another element of the programme for government that's been delivered as a consequence of our actions. And what the document does is it sets out a basis and a rationale why Scotland should be an independent country, and that's what we said that we would explain to the public in Scotland. And what it does is it addresses very directly the circumstances that people are experiencing today in their lives. And that's what I think is the issue of seminal importance at this particular moment, that people are struggling, that we will try and do everything we can within the powers of self-government to advance and improve the living standards of people in Scotland, but ultimately it is the context and the actions of the United Kingdom that are depressing the living standards of people in Scotland. And I'm offering people an alternative to that, and that's what this document represents. Kieran Andrews.
Thanks, First Minister. What would you say to businesses who rely on cross-border trading, who will look at your section on a border with England and see that it basically comes down to a new service being set up to manage any cross-border trading agreements and borders that would be in place, especially if they're worried about their livelihoods being hit by extra checks, potentially extra tariffs as a result of this?
Well, the arrangements that we narrate in the document are arrangements that have been put in place to deal with the circumstances that exist in Northern Ireland, and I think they represent practical and tangible solutions to the very practical issues that you put to me, Kieran, which are designed to address in a very practical way how flows of trade can continue, how we can continue to rely upon the excellence of our company base, but give those companies the opportunity to thrive. But what it also enables us to do, as the document sets out, is open up new opportunities for businesses in Scotland to be able to trade in a much larger market of the European Union, where we have experienced, and that's part of the problem with living standards in Scotland, is that we are experiencing a depression of living standards because of the obstacles and the barriers that are put in place as a consequence of Brexit and leaving the European Union. So the thinking in the document is about encouraging people to look to what are the practical possibilities that arise from the changes that would ensue with independence and the opening up of new opportunities to improve the living standards of people in Scotland as a consequence. And that's the anchoring of the document and the arguments that we put forward. Gina, so I'll ask the broadcast questions.
Thank you, First Minister. In your section on a Scottish currency, I mean, it feels like very much like everything that has been said before about moving to the Scottish pound, holding on to the current pound that we use, but it doesn't say anything about the impact that rejoining the EU would have on that, because surely, really, in the long run, you're looking at joining the euro if you want to go back into the EU. And you mentioned Ireland in your speech. The Irish economy, people think that its GDP figures are kind of distorted by the number of international multinational companies it has, and also it has a private health care service. People have to take out health insurance there. I mean, are these things that you think an independent Scotland would have to look at?
Well, on the question of the currency, there are plenty of countries who are part of the European Union that don't use the euro. So there is no, the European Union is not intent on requiring companies to use the euro. What we've set out here is the logical position that on Scotland becoming independence, we would continue to use our existing currency, the pound sterling, and as soon as practicable move to a Scottish currency that would reflect the economic circumstances of Scotland and be advised upon by a Scottish Central Bank and by the advisory community on these questions. So there's no obligation for an independent Scotland to be part of the euro. And then in relation to your example on Ireland, now obviously there's going to be differences between countries as we take forward our own policy choices. And I support the National Health Service arrangements that we have here in Scotland today. But I think if you look at the Irish situation, Irish wealth per head has increased very significantly as a consequence of the economic measures that have been taken by the government of the Republic of Ireland, and through sensible use of EU membership, huge economic advantages in the generation of wealth in Ireland have been realised. Now, those opportunities have been directly damaged by the decision to leave the European Union and to put us in the position that we find ourselves now in Scotland. And as a consequence of that leads to and fuels the erosion of living standards in Scotland as a consequence. So, while there will be scope for an independent Scotland to take a much broader range of policy choices than we have available to us today, we have taken some fundamental choices about the approach that we take to the health service, which are enshrined, and indeed on one of the points that we make in the document is the character of our National Health Service should be enshrined in a written constitution of an independent Scotland, so that we have absolute certainty for the public about the nature of the operation of the National Health Service, and that can provide a great deal more certainty to people as a consequence. So yes, there will be greater scope for policy choices to be undertaken. That doesn't mean to say that we've got to be follow in an identical way what other countries do, but we also should be open to what other countries have done, and the examples that we cite in the document about the strength of economic ventures that have been created in the Nordic countries is an illustration for me of some of the opportunities that the powers of independence can deploy in that respect. So that's the broadcast questions we're going to deal with just now. We'll have a chat around the table with print journalists in a moment. But thank you for your engagement this morning, and I look forward to further dialogue on the issues that we've raised today. Thank you very much.